Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be running through with you what to do when you get an anti-money laundering refer result. This is one of the biggest challenges of using electronic checks, and it is important that you understand what a refer result means on your electronic check and what you should be doing to protect your business and comply with HMRC. Applying customer due diligence, whether it's electronically or by traditional paper methodologies, it's not an exact science, and ultimately you can only do what can be reasonably expected of you. You're not solicitors, so a thorough investigation of bank accounts and understanding financial paper trails, it's not a specialty skill set for most. So as such, you're not expected to go to that level of investigation. Without going into too much detail, the electronic checks provided by Landmark provide an interpreted assessment of your client. The details you provide are cross-referenced against multiple databases, including things like bank accounts, voters roll, multimedia subscriptions like Sky, the death register, passport and national insurance numbers, and so on. But where there are enough matches between the data you've provided and these data sets, the results will come back as a pass. Where there are not enough matches, the result comes back as a refer. So when we get a pass result, provided you have identified in your money laundering policy and risk assessment that a passed electronic check is sufficient for your risk processes, then you can continue with that relationship. But be aware that customer due diligence requires you to look at the relationship in the round and consider whether any other factors could flag a risk of money laundering. In HMRC's guidance, they provide some indicative circumstances under which a transaction might be considered at risk in section 5.23. For example, significant cash assets, or the seller or buyer is trying to use intermediaries to protect their identity or hide their involvement, or their lifestyle doesn't appear to be consistent with your knowledge of their income, or income doesn't appear to be from a legitimate source, and so on. But generally, though a pass result is going to be sufficient to continue with the relationship. The first thing to say about refer results is that they do not conclusively mean you are dealing with somebody who's trying to launder money. A refer simply means that there is not enough electronic data to verify the individual. And there can be different reasons for this. The first thing to do is to check that you have input the information correctly. A misspelled name or incorrect date of birth and/or address, that will result in a refer. Typically in such cases, the number of primary checks or primary sources, which is shown in the top left of the report, it will be 0. Where the information has been entered correctly, you can review the result to establish what your client has referred on. So your own policies and risk assessments will identify the next course of action you as a business have decided appropriate. But to help, HMRC have provided some useful indicative guidance on next steps. So you could obtain additional information or evidence to establish the identity, take additional measures to verify the original documents supplied, ensure the first payment is made through a bank account in the name of the seller or buyer, take more steps to understand the history, the ownership and the financial situation of the parties to the transaction. In the case of a politically exposed person, establish the source of wealth and source of funds. Carry out scrutiny of the business relationship and satisfy yourself that it is consistent with the stated purpose. You could also confirm with Land Registry the vendors' names are on the property title to confirm ownership. This list is obviously indicative and not exhaustive, and there are other things that you could do as well. On a practical level, though, the sort of activity you should be undertaking when you get a refer result, and in cases where you're applying enhanced due diligence, is you could obtain photo ID and establish its validity, recommended documents such as a valid passport or driving licence, a national identity card, a firearm certificate, or an identity card issued by the Electoral Office for Northern Ireland. You could request a government-issued document without a photo, which includes the person's full name and also secondary evidence of the person's address, such as an old-style driving licence, or recent evidence of entitlement to state or local authority funded benefits, such as housing benefits or council tax benefits, and so on. And you could request secondary evidence of the person's address, but not downloaded from the internet. For example, a utility bill, a bank statement, a building society or a credit union statement, or the most recent mortgage statement. Where you receive these documents physically, you should check for any error. Spellings, validity, photo likeness, whether the addresses match, and whether there are any anomalies in the documents that suggest they are forgeries or fakes. If you receive these documents electronically, you should consider using electronic verification to validate them. One simple method we have discussed previously is the selfie method, which requires your customers to take a selfie with the photo page of their ID held near their face so you can visually confirm this likeness. HMRC have advised that this alone is not sufficient and you must validate the document in order for this method to be acceptable. You can validate passports and driving licenses using the landmark checks by entering the details on the check when you order it. And this might seem a strange thing to say, but you don't need a pass in order to comply with the regulations. You are required to undertake a risk-based approach to money laundering risk. This means you use the tools at your disposal to make an informed decision about the risk posed to your business. If, for example, you get a refer and complete the appropriate steps outlined in your policy and risk assessment, satisfying yourself that the individual is who they say they are and that they are legitimately selling or buying, then there is no need to undertake a check to try and get a pass. The electronic check can be filed away alongside the additional verification to evidence your process. If you do have any questions from this, you know we're obviously always there for you if anything comes back as a refer and you're not sure what to do. But hopefully this has been useful for you, and thank you everyone for joining.